This training will cover the funding module within the iSite contract management portal. You can access the funding module by navigating to the contract management menu and clicking on funding. The home page that appears for funding gives a status update of recently viewed packages as well as packages that require further action. At the top, you'll see the last five packages that I have viewed for quick access. You'll also see panels that display funding requests or packages in various statuses. So any funding requests that are awaiting approval, any packages that are awaiting funding, any funding actions awaiting approval, and any funding package that is waiting to be published. On this page, there are also some functions available to you. I can view all of the funding within iSite by clicking the View All Funding Packages link. I can also create 3 different types of funding packages right from these links here. I have quick access to my inbox to process these funding statuses here, and then I also have a list of reports that are available for funding. In the upper left-hand corner, there is a quick access menu, which allows me access to specific functions for this module. So I can click on the summary, which is what we're viewing now. I can click on a view that will show me packages that are currently awaiting funding, or view all of those packages. I have a creation option here of the 3 different types of funding packages that are available to us. I can review, publish, and then of course view the reports. So let's cover on how to create a funding package. Now, I'm showing 3 different types of packages that we can create. Those options will be visible based on the settings in your iSite license. So for instance, if you have no need for a funding request, that can be turned off. Same thing for funding transfers. But let's go ahead and start with a funding request. So a funding request is just as it sounds. It's a request that somebody is putting in to add funding to a task within the system. So to do that, I'll select the task that I want to add funding to. If I actually happen to select a task that already has an open funding package, iSite will let me know that and will provide a quick link to that package that I can go ahead and open and look at and see if there's anything that I need to do with it. But let's go ahead and select a package that doesn't have an open request. So these are the types of requests that I have available. I can choose to add funding or remove funding. Right now we're in a cost overrun situation, so we actually have spent more funding than we've been given. So let's go ahead and request an amount that'll give us some breathing room. So I'll go ahead and say 35,000, and then we'll give it a reason. And we'll go ahead and submit that funding request. So typically when a funding request is submitted, the funding request will be emailed to anybody in iSite who has permissions to apply funding for the request. For the purposes of training here, I'm actually acting in that capacity as well. Typically, you wouldn't have the same person requesting funding that's also applying funding or adding a funding action here. But again, for the purposes of this training, this is what that process would look like. So after I've gotten my notification that a request has been put into the system, I can go ahead and start applying funding. So the first thing I'll do is I'll click the Edit Funding Action button, and this will allow me to look at what was requested here. I don't need to change the name. The funding request looks fine. Obviously, they're adding funding. I don't need to do anything with that. Looks like there is a field here that I do need to fill out, so I'll just put that in here, but that would be considered a custom field, and you do have the ability to add custom fields to your funding requests. So I'll just put 5 there. That sounds good, and we'll update that. Next thing I have available to me is my fund source details. So these are the fund sources that have already been applied to this task in the past. I have the ability to work with those if I want. I'm going to go ahead and add a new fund source. If I wanted to actually change this fund source and add money to it, I could do that if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and add a new fund source. So we'll go ahead and select cost center. We'll give it a WBS number. Okay, choose the fund. And then there's some additional information that I can provide at this point if I have it. If I don't have it, I don't need to provide it. Keep in mind these fields will only be visible if the funding obligation functionality is enabled within your iSite instance, and that is covered in the settings training session for iSite. So I'll leave those blank for now, and I'll say, yeah, we'll go ahead and give $35,000 because that's what was asked for. Add fund source. Now you'll notice when iSite is showing you your fund source details, any fund source that has changed or been added will be highlighted in pink. So you'll know that fund source is new or the fund source was changed within this package. You'll also notice what the original funding level was. Obviously, because this was a new fund source, the original funding level was 0, and I've gone ahead and added $35,000 worth. Again, if I wanted to change an existing fund source, I could go ahead and do that. So let's just say if I wanted to add another $5,000 of additional funding from this fund source, I could go ahead and do that as well. And you'll see once I update here, the fund source will be updated to reflect that I'm adding $5,000 in funding, as you see here. So the original funding level was $734,000 and change. I've added $5,000. This is the new funding level. So I'm essentially adding $40,000 of funding in this package. I can go ahead and continually to add new fund sources as I see fit. I can delete any ones that I've added. Any fund sources that were there historically cannot be deleted. So I can only add or take away funding. I can't actually delete the fund source because I want that historical trail that that fund source was there for, so I don't want to delete those. So once I'm done editing my fund source details, I click this finish button down here, and now I can go ahead and submit the funding package if I don't have any other things to do with this funding package. I do have the ability to do two other things. If I want to go ahead and delete this request altogether or this whole package, I can go ahead and click the delete button. It will give me a message asking me if I'm sure I want to delete it. If I do, that funding package will be deleted permanently and I can't retrieve it. But I'll go ahead and cancel. I can also cancel the funding package, so if there's a reason why I want to keep the funding package there for reference purposes, but just not make it active any longer, I can go ahead and cancel it, and then this funding package will no longer be able to be worked on. I don't want to do that either. So at this point, as the person who is funding this request, I'm done, so I can go ahead and click Submit Funding Package. And at this point, the funding package is submitted, and somebody else can act on that funding at that point in time. Now, it just happens to be that I do have funding obligation turned on here within the this iSite instance, so that allows me to add PR information. So as you see here, it's awaiting some purchase request data. So if I want to come in here, I could go ahead and look at this information. As we see here, I haven't added any PR line items or PO line items. So what that means is I can go ahead and get into this funding package via my inbox and add that the funding obligation functionality. Now again, keep in mind, I'm acting in a training capacity here. Typically the same people who aren't funding them, or typically the same people who are funding them will not be obligating them. There are cases where that does happen, but if that's the case for you, then you would obviously act on that within the inbox itself. So let's go to my funding obligation creation. This is the funding request we were just working on here. So if I want to, I can go ahead and do one of three options. I can go ahead and reject this at this point in time, which will send it all the way back to the original person who did the funding. I can revise it, which means it allows me to go ahead and get in there and make changes. Or I can go ahead and continue on and do the purchase request creation. So when I do the purchase request creation, I'm going to choose the packages that are currently awaiting obligation to include in this PR. I'll go ahead and select all of them. Go ahead and continue. There's a validation, so if there's anything in here that I want to go ahead and change, I can go ahead and change it here if I want to. Put whatever there. Go ahead and click continue. Oh, actually save and then continue. Now it's assumed at this point that the information that I am entering into my PR system will have given me a PR number, so I'll go ahead and add that PR number to this step. Continue. And finally, we'll go ahead and summarize what I'm about to do. I'll go ahead and hit finish. And now those two packages that were awaiting funding obligation have been completed, and now they've moved over to the funding obligation completion step. So what that means is a PR has been generated. Now what we're waiting for is PO information to come back from my purchase request system. So assuming a few days go by, and once I get that PO information, I can go into my funding obligation section and go ahead and act on those packages that were awaiting PO data. So while I'm in here, I can do one of two things. I can go ahead and delete the PR altogether if I want. If I want to go ahead and delete that, it'll just remove this package from this setting, and this package will no longer be available. But what I really want to do is I want to go ahead and create a purchase order. So I'll select both of my packages here, put them all in the same purchase order. This is the PR I want to finalize. Obviously, that's the PR that's assigned to these two funding packages. I'll go ahead and click continue. Here's the information here. If I want to make any changes, so I can add my PO information if I want. So PO is 1, 2, 3, 4. My PO line item 1, 1, and alternate line item 1, 2. Hit continue, summarize, and now those packages are completely obligated in our system here. So if I go back to my funding and look at the funding package it just created, it's now at a status of published, and that funding package is completed at this point in time. Again, keep in mind that there is email communication between each of these steps. So when I submit my request, there's an email that's going to go to folks that are allowed to add funding to it. Once I have added my funding and I'm awaiting PR, an email will go to the people who are authorized to add PR and add PO information and so forth. Okay, so that's how I created a funding request. Let's just say I didn't want to deal with the funding request. I just wanted to create a funding action. I know myself that I want to add funding, so let's just go ahead and start with the funding action portion. So same situation here. I'll go ahead and select a specific task that I want to perform an action on, and then we'll say add $50,000. And these are my funding types. Again, no difference from before. I can do an amendment or deobligation. Remember, if I'm deobligating, I'm removing funding. If I'm amending, then I'm adding funding. Funding date, I can assign here. I'll give it another PR assignment. Again, this is a custom field. You might not see something like this on your screen, but any custom attributes you see or that are created, you'll see in this area here. So now I'm at the point where the funding action has been created. I can go ahead and add my funding. You see this is the fund sources that were there before. This is the one we created in the funding package just a few moments ago. So let's go ahead and edit my fund source details. I'll go ahead and add a new fund source again, add my information here. Don't need any of that right now. And we'll say we're going to add $50,000. So I've added a new fund source line for $50,000. This is the information that goes with it. I'm done at this point. I don't need to add any more fund sources. So once I'm done, I can go ahead and submit. And now this funding package will be awaiting the purchase request information. Okay, and seeing that I have already gone through the funding obligation process, there's no need to go through that process here again. So let's go back out to our funding summary page, and I'll show you one other funding package that we can create. This is called a funding transfer. So here's what we're going to do. We have a scenario where we need to take funds from one task and put them on another task. So we're going to simply choose the source task. So let's say we're going to choose number 22. And the next thing we're going to do is choose the fund source that add the fund sources that we wish to distribute funding to. So these are the fund sources that are in my source package. So let's go ahead and choose a new destination for some of this funding. So right now I have about $2,100 left. If I want to move all of that, I can go ahead and do that if I want to. So let's choose a new destination. So I'm going to choose from this fund source, and I'm going to move it to task 18, the one we were just working on. So I have two different things I can do. I can move all of it, which is the entire amount, or I can specify an amount. If I want to specify, just say $2,000 of it, I can go ahead and do that. Oh, there's already a funding package open. That's right. That's the one we just created a moment ago. So let's pick a different package for that to go to. And I still got a little bit left. I got about $156 left, so let's move that as well. So I'll create a new destination. And we're going to move that to here. Sounds good. And that's going to remove the remaining portion for me. So once I've selected all of my destinations that I want the funding to go to, I go ahead and click continue. Now this will summarize my choices. So I've chosen demo 22 as my source. I'm going to transfer 2,000 to the one task, 156 to the other task, and click finish. Now what I would normally have to do if I didn't have this handy fund transfer tool is I would actually have to create a few different packages here. The first package I would create would be a deobligation on task 22, and I would deobligate $2,156.57 from that task. Then I would have to create two new packages, which would be amendments, and I would create one package for demo 17 and demo 23. Demo 17 would add $2,000. Demo 23 would add $156.57. So rather than having to create three different packages here, iSite makes it easy, and it creates all those for you. So it'll create the package to take away the money from here, and it'll create packages to add the money into these other two tasks, all in one fell swoop. And that's it, essentially. Nothing else to do there for that transfer. So once the transfer is done, there's no further approvals or anything like that. It's important to note that only folks with the funding publishing permission in iSite are allowed to perform the funding transfer option. Because again, there is no approval process that goes through there. As soon as that funding transfer is initiated, then that process is complete and those funds are marked as moved within iSite. Okay, a couple of the reports. Again, we won't go into each of the reports. I encourage you to look at the report name and description to determine whether or not those reports are useful for you. Again, just like with anything, reports may have specific parameters it asks for. Those parameters should be self-explanatory for you. If there's any additional reporting needs that you have for funding and you want them available in a custom format, we can go ahead and add those reports to your instance of iSite. And that basically covers the funding module within the iSite Contract Management Portal.